banks for your candidates in LD6. We all know around this state that LD6 is very important for flipping our legislature. We know how important it is to elect our new slate out in near Window Rock area. So let me just tell you a little bit what's been on my mind. What I see, now remember, I've been around a long time. I mean, I am a former county prosecutor, a former assistant attorney general. I worked for Janet Napolitano for 12 years in the governor's office and at the Department of Homeland Security. We all know that we have seen a version of leadership in this state before that is worthy of the voters of Arizona. We also know that we haven't seen that in a while. And so this year is the opportunity for us to elect leaders, again, who are beholden to you, to me, to the families of Arizona, instead of being beholden to a very small group of donors, which is what's happening right now. And so here's this opportunity. Yesterday I had the chance, we had the U.S. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto was in town. We had an event in the morning, and it was primarily a Latino gathering, and lots of people there. I had the chance to introduce my mom, who's from Arizona, southern Arizona. And it hit me when I introduced her. I am not a first-generation college student because of my mom. She went to college while I was growing up. She didn't get to go to her graduation because she was too busy working. She was too busy taking care of me. But that is the dreams and the hopes that are riding on all of us, because my job is to enforce the law, to enforce it in a way that is, we're protecting everybody's rights. We're going to boot out an attorney general right now who is suing to eliminate protections for people with pre-existing health conditions. We're going to replace someone who right now is using our taxpayer money to defend the secrecy of the Koch brothers networks in California. We are going to replace this guy with someone who has a deep love for Arizona and the people of Arizona. And we're going to do that in many of these positions, not just the Attorney General's office. I want to leave with you knowing what you can do, because the Attorney General race, we don't get a lot of attention. You see the Senate race, you see the gubernatorial race, but I need your help. Right now, we are only down 2 points in our polling. Yeah, so that's exciting. Out of the whole country, the Republican Attorney General Association, and this is the payday lenders, the Koch brothers, you know, the Koch industry, I mean, this is who funds the Republican Attorney General Association. Out of the whole country, I'm their top target. They're bringing $1.9 million to Arizona to make sure that Brnovich doesn't lose. But it is our job to make sure that he does. So here's where I can use your help. Right now is the time. If there are 2, 3 people right here who would take the time to write a letter to the editor, you take your pick. You want to write about Brnovich suing to eliminate protections for people with pre-existing conditions? You want to write about him defending the Koch brothers donors, the same people who kicked our Outlaw Dirty Money initiative off the ballot? Take your pick. Letters to the editor right now is one way we can bring attention to this race. And secondly, talk about the Attorney General race to your friends and family. And I know many of you are doing that, because when I come up to Flagstaff, people do know about the Attorney General race. They have heard my name before, and that's all because of you. So I want to thank you so much for all that you're doing to create the energy that you can just feel and see up here. It's an important part of winning these races. We will bring back leadership, again, that we can trust. That's where we are right now. Very basic. Electing, again, leaders leaders that we can trust. And that's going to be great. We're going to have a lot to celebrate on November 6th. So thank you so much. I'm glad to be here with you.
Thank you for that introduction, Sean. Hi, I'm Mark Manoyle. I'm running for state treasurer.
Hi, Mark.
Good to see you. I can't tell you how happy I am to be up here, although I have to admit it was a little hard to wake up this morning. We've been pounding out the miles, and unfortunately, as far as I know, there is no frequent driver program that we could be taking advantage of. We were in Sells Friday evening, which is at the southern end of the state in the Anahatham Nation, and then yesterday was a full day of campaigning around Maricopa County, fortunately, but it was a very long day. I'm running for state treasurer, and a lot of Democrats wonder, well, so get on to the next speaker. But this is an important race. We haven't had a Democratic treasurer in Arizona elected since 1964, more than 50 years ago. And if you've been paying attention to what happens at the state capitol, you know that we've had a succession of treasurers who pretty much go along to get along as they move along on their political ambitious ladder. What's the next thing after this? And my opponent is pretty much, she had difficulty deciding whether she was going to run for Congress this cycle or run for treasurer. She decided to run for treasurer. But getting to kind of the bigger value statement of why I'm running, I'm a fourth generation Arizonan. In fact, my great-grandfather and his older brother and some other family members came out in the 1880s to establish Phoenix's first commercial bank. Prescott and Tucson already had banks. Their local merchants were able to do business with their local banks, and the folks in Phoenix did not yet have a bank. So my great-grandfather and his brother came out to establish the first bank there, and they went on to become territorial treasurers, both of them. My great-grandfather's older brother in the early 1890s. Oh, wait a second, I'm timed? Okay. And then my great-grandfather was the territorial treasurer in the early 1900s. And lately I've been thinking about, okay, knowing that, it gives me sort of an opportunity to try to imagine what it was like looking forward from their point of view to the beginning of the 20th century and what this new state Arizona might look like, and what values would drive the state, what institutions were important to establish to have a healthy state where the people could prosper. And you know, the state constitution that came a decade later in 1911 was one that promised public education for everybody, but it went further than that. It said we also want to provide higher education as nearly free as possible for men and women. And that's right. And actually, even though women's suffrage wasn't granted in that original Constitution in 1912, you know, we became a state on Valentine's Day in 1912. And in the general election later that year, women's suffrage was granted in the state of Arizona. And so from the very beginning, Arizona was kind of focused on opportunity and the promise that everybody who comes here should have an opportunity to thrive. And we've seen that opportunity go sideways with the defunding of public education, the defunding of community colleges in Maricopa and Pima counties, and the defunding of our universities. We have 47% less funding for the universities now than we had a decade ago. Instead, the kinds of opportunities we're seeing are the opportunities to get elected to the legislature so that you can loot the public purse. How many of you appreciate the opportunity that Senator Farnsworth has availed himself of in getting a $12 to $30 million payoff thanks to taxpayers with his charter school investments? It's fantastic, isn't it? Well, again, I'm Mark Manuel. I'm running for state treasurer. What I would like to work on for our state is actually creating a state-level partnership bank that can work with community banks and credit unions to improve the credit opportunities in our state for entrepreneurs, for individuals, for students who are facing big student loan debt, and for local governments who are having trouble financing infrastructure. We have an example that comes to us from North Dakota. It's not a novel idea. This is a very well-established idea, and it's only challenged by the big consolidated banks who don't want to see any kind of competition like that. I thank you for your attention. My time's up, apparently, according to the sign. And I ask you to remember Mark Manuel for State Treasurer. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Eva Pucova, and I'm still your council member if you live in the city of Flagstaff. And I'm here to talk about the minimum wage. As you probably all know, those of you that live within the city limits, in 2016, the voters passed Proposition 414 that increased the Flagstaff minimum wage to $15 by 2021, established a local enforcement office that makes sure that people in the lowest paid occupations actually get paid what the law says, and also increased or scheduled to increase the exploitative sub-minimum tipped wage to the full minimum wage slowly by 2026. The corporate lobby, the champions are, as we know, Chamber of Commerce and the other NRA, as we like to call them, National Restaurant Association, that's represented locally by the Flagstaff Lodging and Restaurant Association. They got dark money to come to Flagstaff and actually lied to people and qualified their misleadingly named Sustainable Wages Act as Proposition 418 for this fall elections. Originally it was American Anchor that ended up funding the efforts. That's a company, C4 company out of Phoenix. Today the money comes from another similar outfit called America Revived. And it's, again, dark money, not disclosed. We do not know, you the voters do not know who funds the efforts to decrease Flagstaff minimum wage. But this initiative called 418, we're asking people to vote no because it will decrease Flagstaff's minimum wage. Importantly, it will take all the local enforcement out of the law, and it will keep the tipped workers living in poverty. And I'm going to talk a little bit about tipped workers in Flagstaff. So there are about 3,000 tipped workers. 65% are women, 40% are people of color, and 47% are older than 24. So this is the population that the corporate lobby led by our Koch brothers network friends and the Chamber of Commerce are attacking. And you think that tipped workers, oh, they make great money. Those are not the tipped workers that work in high-end restaurants. It's the IHOPs, Applebee's, all the chains, the people you don't see, the people who do not have the privilege like we have to be here today. So please vote no on 418. This is what helps the local economy. You put money into the pockets of people who make the least, they will spend them. And the local economy is doing great. Over the last year, since the local initiative, the one that we passed in 2016, started to be implemented, the economy grew by 12%. That's the increase in the sales tax revenue. The restaurant industry grew by 9% during the same year when the wages went up. So don't let anybody tell you that this is killing our local businesses. It is not. please vote no. And if you want to know who are the wealthiest people in this town, in Flagstaff, just look at the gas stations and the motel and hotels that have the yes on 418 signs. These are the people, they're multimillionaires, and they're trying to take money away from the lowest paid people. Let me tell you, what they want people to make no more than $26,000 a year. That's how that's what $12.50 per hour amounts to. We think that you know, $30,000 is very reasonable. Please vote no on 418. The people who are not here to speak up are the people who need our help. Wages have been stagnating for way too long, and it's only because of the voters, only because of the people the wages go up. The businesses do not raise their wages for their lowest paid employees unless we, the people, say it's time that you cannot live in poverty. The tipped workers, just a little piece of information, the tipped workers, locally we subsidize to the tune of $4.5 million. That's the amount that we pay in food stamps and Medicaid. That's just for the tipped workers. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leah Porter. I'm here with Save Our Schools Arizona. Save Our Schools Arizona is a grassroots group of volunteers who formed last year when SB 1431 was passed into legislation. We got over 100,000 signatures to put it on your ballot this November, so you can decide where your tax dollars are going and help us protect our public education systems. So if 305, we really want to urge you to vote no on 305. We want to protect our public funding and keep our public funds in our public schools. 305 seeks to pull funding from our public schools by expanding these things called empowerment scholarship accounts. Empowerment scholarship accounts is basically a misleading rebranding of vouchers. It pulls money from our public tax dollars that would be going to teacher salaries, to building renovations, to current technology improvements, and puts it onto a debit card and gives it to a parent who wants to use it for private school tuition, private tutoring, parochial school tuition, things that are not really regulated and that our tax dollars are not actually legally allowed to support. Because they're on debit cards, it gets around the system. So right now, empowerment scholarship accounts are benefiting students who need a little bit more than public education can provide. Special needs students, children of veterans, children attending DRF rated schools. But what they seek to do is expand it to all of the students in our school systems. And these students who are benefiting from it now would no longer be priority. It would be a first come, first served basis. And the parents who are able to take advantage of this do not have to be of a certain income. They do not have to live in a certain place if it is expanded. So a parent making $1 million and living next to the best public school can still take advantage of this scholarship. And that is so wrong because the students who have parents who are not able to afford private education in the first place will not be able to, the scholarship does not completely fund their tuition. So the parents who can't make up the rest of that in the first place are not going to be able to send their children to these private schools. So that what they're selling you on is choice and opportunity and scholarship is kind of just a mask for giving our tax dollars to the wealthy. Thank you guys so much for your time. I'm looking for volunteers, and we have an email list if you guys are interested in learning more. I've got a website that has all the facts and really good information for you guys. I also have signs, I've got stickers, I've got shirts. The list goes on, buttons, and I would just love to get to talk to you guys and spread the word about ESAs are vouchers. Vouchers steal money from our public schools, so vote no on 305. Yeah!